Hi everyone, welcome back. So today we've had Martin back for his final presentation on everything to do with the research he's been doing up in Yorkshire, but not just in Yorkshire and all over Britain. And we went into revisited some of the drama between Michael and the devil within the landscape. Did the ancient people in Britain discover the golden ratio before the Greeks, or separate to the Greeks? What's going on there?
Yeah, we cover quite a lot of things, didn't we?
Mm,
Gone over some of the stuff we did in some of the previous episodes, and then eventually brought it all back down to Thornborough again and the Henges there, and Marty's idea for a date for the construction, and he's got some damn good reasons why he thinks that. But
yeah,
it's a shame the series has come to an end, but hopefully Martin will come back at some point if he's got any other little tidbits for us to
yeah,
feast on. Um,
yeah.
and we've got some more um, star map magic hopefully next week. We're welcoming back Steve Willits to cover his Southeast Wales star map, which we're both excited for as well. So we hope you enjoy Martin's contribution. And yeah,
Enjoy.
Before we start, just quickly, here are some AI generated art pieces which were done for Martin's work especially. And if you're interested in anything like this done for yourself, contact Peter and he can refer you to Troy who does this stuff. Thanks.
welcome back, Martin.
Thank you very much. Well, thanks for having me.
That's all right. We are here
Mm.
for your final instalment of the Yorkshire Starmac Megalithic complex and any other verbs, adjectives I need to put on there. Massive mega structure. I mean, what else can we call it? Lines, alignments, devils.
Yeah, Devils, St. Michael.
Michael, yeah,
Michael, oh God, yeah, I
yeah,
missed him
yeah.
out.
We
That's
get to
great.
South America and Asia today.
Oh,
Wow.
fantastic.
Only very briefly.
It's just to warm up from spending so much time in Yorkshire, is
Yeah,
that?
Yes, yeah, that's right.
Well, it's great. We're going to have
Well,
loads of fun.
everyone needs a holiday, don't they?
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah. That's it.
Well, fire
Once you get
away
to
whenever
the
you're
holiday.
ready. Really looking
Right.
forward to it. We've
Okay.
had a bit of a gap between these.
Right. So, picture on the front there, you may recognise it's Mont Saint Michael in northern France, and you'll see why there's a picture of it in a few slides. Let's just say
Yes,
that.
awesome.
Yeah, it's quite impressive, isn't it?
Mm.
Yeah, it is.
So just quickly the story so far. So we started by talking about the Thornborough Henges and the Devil's Arrows, and we got onto the Roodstone monolith. So the Roodstone monolith is the largest standing stone in Britain, and two of the Devil's Arrows, the two that are furthest away in that picture, are the second and third largest. So the one that guy is dwarfed by isn't one of the largest. We then started from the basis that it's almost commonly accepted that the Thornborough Henges may reflect Orion, the stars of Orion's belt on the ground. And I spent some time trying to extend that. You might call it star map, a small star map it was, and finished up with this. So these are the Thornborough Henges. Down here we have the Devil's Arrows that are the Pleiades, and up here we have Canabarn Henge, which is Aldebaran, and the accuracy of that is to within 100 feet on each of them. We looked at the odds of that and they're enormous. So it's not likely to happen randomly.
No.
So I'm pretty confident that that was deliberate. And if you remember, this particular picture of the Pleiades and the Devil's Arrows had extended the stars a little bit just so that you could see that they were there, because when I first showed it, you couldn't.
Yeah.
Right, so that was episode 1. Episode 2, we then went on to say, well, why is it this shape on the ground? That is a funny shape. Why not have it orientated north, south, or east, west? So the first, well, wasn't actually the first thing, but the first significant thing we looked at was that this particular line here and this angle, measured from north, represents the furthest south setting of Aldebaran. So Cannabine is Aldebaran, and this line marks out the furthest south setting of it. And that happened in 9600 BC. And here you can see Aldebaran rising. So here's the horizon along where the angular measurement is, and you can see that that is 151, and you can see that up here, 150.96, and it's just above the horizon, which obviously it would need to be above the horizon for them to be able to see it. The months and the days are totally irrelevant here, because the stars rise at the same point on the horizon throughout the year and only drift very slowly. You'll have heard that precession is 1 degree every 72 years. The movement along the horizon isn't quite like that, because it's a sort of sine wave.
Yes.
So sometimes it's fast, but at the ends it's quite slow. So that particular date was the date of the catastrophic end of the Ice Age. So it was the Younger Dryas period, and we saw at that point a warming of 10 degrees in a very short period of time. At the start of it, they thought, when they first found out about it, they thought that the period was about 20 years. That period has shrunk every time I've read about it, and people are now saying it's possible that the temperature rise occurred in a year. Now, if you compare that with what we've seen, 1.5 degrees in nearly 200 years, you can see that something was going on.
Absolutely.
Wow.
9600 BC is also Plato's date for the end of Atlantis in Timaeus. And for those that doubt Plato, he goes to great lengths in those two writings to say that he's telling a true story. It's in there at least 4 times. Now, there are a number of legends about something happening in the sky and causing catastrophes on the earth. So, as it says here, the Dakota Sioux have the legend of Aldebaran falling to earth after killing a serpent. So, battle in the sky, and something fell, and that created the Mississippi River. Now, at this time, 9600 BC, with that warming, we got what's called meltwater pulse 1b, sounds very technical, but at the end of the Ice Age, you had a continuous rise in sea level, really, but there were 2 or 3 big events where you got 10s or 20s or 30s of feet within a very few years. And meltwater pulse 1b was one of the biggest. There's also a legend that when the flood was caused, God took 2 of the Pleiades and used those to create the flood. So,
interesting.
All interesting stories. Might be nothing in them at all, but one tends to think that there might be as well. Right, so the next thing we looked at was the Ripon Cathedral hypothesis. So remember, we're still talking about this line. And this is the halfway point of the line, spot on the halfway point. You'll notice there's another henge on the line, by the way, and that is exactly on the line. That line goes through the edges of the henge. But it's not in the middle, and we'll come to why later on. Now, I didn't know what to make of this line at all. I've struggled with it for ages. And eventually I found that if I took a right angle to it, that would pick out the summer solstice sunrise. And then if I come back from there, just follow it back, it comes to Ripon Cathedral and actually passes about where that figure is there. So it comes across there.
Yeah.
You'll also recall that the legend of the way that the devil's arrows were formed or built talks about the devil standing on How Hill, and How Hill is down here. So just briefly update you with the legend, because this is relevant to what we're about to talk about. So
yeah, good.
If you remember, this was supposedly in the very early days of Christianity, and the priests, or the Christian priests or missionaries, went to see the king to talk about the kingdom becoming Christian. And the Druids came and they had a big argument. And halfway through the argument, this very old wizened Druid appeared and walked over the hill. And he was a very convincing speaker with very convincing arguments. And the discussion was going the Druids' way. And then one of the missionaries noticed that the devil, and you can see it here, his feet were sinking into the ground and the ground was bubbling and hot. And he immediately assumed it was the devil, and he shouted something like, "Get behind me, Satan," which maddened the devil, and he picked up the stones and threw them towards Aldborough, and they actually fell just short. I always say, if you're ever in a place where the devil wants to throw stones at you, stand still, he's likely to miss.
Oh, yeah. Heard that before.
So this is How Hill, and there's a building on it, which I thought was relatively modern, so I had nothing to do with what we are interested in. But you may remember that this building was built on the site of a previous building, which was St. Michael's Chapel. Now, why was there a St. Michael's Chapel there, is the question. So the legends are that St. Michael battled the devil and killed the devil, and this is from Revelation, actually, so I suppose it's a prophecy. And this is a Middle Eastern picture of St. Michael here killing the devil. So it may be that the early Christians knew about the stories about the devil's arrows and the Thornborough Henges, and just wanted their own legend to overcome that. But if we look at this, we found these stars that look very similar to the Hyades, which Aldebaran is one of them, and we already have Aldebaran represented by Canabarn. So could this be some way of drawing our attention to that? And I think there is quite a reasonable possibility of that. So that's the legend. We then talked about the location being special, and it is. Thornborough Henges, or the Devil's Arrows, actually, are 10% of the Earth's circumference from the North Pole. They're at 54 degrees, which doesn't sound very significant, but it's 60% of the way from the equator to the North Pole. There are some interesting astronomical alignments there that you would only get at that latitude, and if anyone's interested in what they are, take a look at, I think it was episode 2. And then we went on to talk about the Roodstone monolith, which we saw in the previous slide. the biggest standing stone in Britain, and how that might have some sort of significance to represent the people that at that time knew about precession and had knowledge of the size and shape of the solar system. Right, so episode 3, we then went on to all the devil's works, and if you remember this picture, these are all the devil's sites I've found. I've not put natural ones in here, by the way, so things like, there's a famous valley somewhere in the Downs, that's not in. You'll notice though, sorry, go on, Pete.
No, I was just interested. Be probably worth maybe looking at them in future though, and just seeing if there is anything else there where the name or the
yes, yeah.
or an interesting rock outcrop or something like that, which could act as a marker.
Yes, it would indeed.
But I can see why you have to draw the line at some point as well. It's a lot of data points, isn't it?
There is. So you'll notice that most of them are down in this area, and down here there aren't many at all. So we can draw this line across here, and people who know about English history might know what that line is. It's the line that marked the division of the Danelaw to the Saxon-ruled lands of the south. Now, not everyone will know what the Danelaw was. So when the Vikings started invading England, they came as raiders, really, and lots of plunder and rape and all the rest of it that people are familiar with. Somewhere about 870, I can't remember the exact date, but it doesn't matter. They came in force, and it was called, I think, the Grand Army or the Great Army or something. They landed in Yorkshire, conquered Yorkshire, and then they moved down to Norfolk. And they conquered the kingdom that was around Norfolk, and then went on and conquered Mercia, which was in the middle here. And that only left Wessex. Now, Wessex, roughly around here. And you'll have heard of the King of Wessex, because it's King Alfred, the only English monarch to be called the Great. They almost beat Alfred as well, because on New Year's Day one year they attacked, and he was probably suffering from a hangover, I suspect. You know what Brits are like. And he beat them.
It was in Somerset, so it was probably scrumpy cider.
Yes, probably.
Which is a killer.
And Alfred survived by running away effectively, and he ran away to the Somerset Levels, which are an area of marshland, and he sheltered with this old woman, and that's where the story of him burning the cakes come from. So she left him, she was baking bread, so she left him to look after the bread, and he let them burn. She wasn't impressed. Anyway, he came out of hiding, and there was a huge battle. I can't remember the name of the battle now, but he won it. And eventually, they settled with the Danes on this line, and so the Danes ruled north of the line, and Alfred ruled south. Now, it's interesting because, sorry to go on about that. It's interesting because the Danes didn't have a figure that was synonymous with the devil. So I suspect that what we're seeing here are the devil sites that had made the biggest impact on the people, and the name just continued, whereas all the others were obliterated.
Well, it could be under the name maybe Grimm or even Odin or Woden or.
Yeah, it could be actually. Yeah.
I mean, I know we obviously get those Saxon versions in England as well. We get the like Woden, for instance, rather than Odin. But it'd be interesting if there may be none named after other
Might be worth having a look at that.
Yeah.
Actually,
Yeah.
I might add that to my list, but I can't guarantee when I'll get to it.
No. Oh, it's good to just be aware of these things, isn't it? You never know what will catch your eye.
Yes, yeah, that's right. I mean, we've got one here, which is the Druid Stone, and it's the devil something or other. It's fallen off the edge of the picture, so I can't tell you what. So there are a few that are not quite devil, and we'll come to another one actually in a slide or two. If you remember, this really began when I started. I'd reached a point that I didn't know where to continue, and I'll just briefly mention my 3 o'clock in the morning voices, which kept telling me to look south, and I kept got into an argument really, and not that I'm an argumentative soul, you know that. And I've looked south. No, look south. So eventually, if you remember, I drew a line from the Devil's Arrows due south. And it passes about 200 feet to the east of this site, and this site is the Devil's Quoit near Oxford. It's at Whitney.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of the most famous sites in England. So I thought, maybe there is something to this. So that got me interested in Devil's Sight. And then I looked around, and Devil's Quoit is actually quite a common name. All of these are called Devil's Quoit in some manner or other. This one is Cromlech, is a pile of stones, effectively. Yeah. This is due west of this one. And it's in Pembroke, and all of these 3 are in Pembroke.
Nice.
So we talked about those last time anyway, but just reminding you. Now, interestingly, this one, and this one are all near St Michael's churches. We also then went down to Cornwall, and here we have the Devil's Quoit in Cornwall, and obviously it was Dolmen at some point, but only the capstone is left. And then we also found the Devil's Tor, which Peter is familiar with, on Dartmoor. And this stone is called Bear Down Man, and is just north of the Devil's Tor. And I know from discussions that it's much bigger than it looks.
Yeah.
We also covered the Devil's Stone at Shebar. They have a ceremony every year, I think it's the 5th of November, where they turn it over to keep the devil at bay for another year. Now, the church at Shebar is St Michael's. So we've got something building up here in terms of churches. But if you remember, we built this triangle then. So this was the north-south line. This was the east-west line. This was the line of the the winter solstice from the Devil's Arrows. This was the sight line, this black one, was the sight line of the equinox sunset from Whitney. And there is a line joining these, but you can't see them. And then there's a north-south line here down to the Devil's Quoit in Cornwall. This line here is the sunset on Samhain. So that all looks pretty much designed to me.
Yeah.
this is more detail of Pembroke, so, and you can see the lines coming in here. So this is the one that goes across to Oxford. This is the north-south line I talked about, finishing at Quoits Wood, and there's another one there. And this is the one up to the Devil's Arrows. We then went on to talk about what I thought when I first started this was a fictitious and amusing tale of a Devil's Line, which would reflect the St. Michael's Line. So the St. Michael's Line is the most famous ley line in Britain, and this is where it goes. But there is a Devil's similar line. So if you look at this, we're going through quite a lot of Devil's sites very near to them. Now, when we were talking about that, Peter mentioned Hellstone, which never struck me as a Devil's site, but when you think about it, is absolutely obviously a Devil's site. So that leads us on to the new stuff. Now, let me just here. That's it.
What have we got here?
You remember this?
No.
Right, enough of that.
They look like they're having a great time.
Yeah.
Right, so when we talked about this, you mentioned Hellstone and the Flower Festival on May the 8th in Hellstone. Now, it also has a song which I thought was amusing. That song is the Flower Dance, which was recorded in the 1970s by the Restrick and Brighouse Brass Band.
Is that what you just treated us to?
That's what I've treated you to.
Yeah.
And that, believe it or not, got to number 2 in the charts. So I just thought that was amusing.
So do they use this song on Florida Day?
Apparently so. Yeah.
A version of it, obviously.
Yeah, it'd be a version of it. Yeah. So the town in Hellstone, that's what we've just said, has a Flora Day on the 8th of May each year. St. Michael's Day is the 8th of May, and Hellstone Church is St. Michael's. Now, there is a legend that goes with this. Many years ago, a fiery dragon appeared and dropped a large stone on an area known as Angel Yard. And further on, there's another piece from this. So the devil was carrying the stone that sealed Hell's mouth when he met St. Michael and dropped the stone on Hellstone. Well, interesting, don't you think?
Yeah.
May the 8th is a celebration of maybe a meteor falling on Hellstone.
Absolutely. Or something in the area, or at least a memory of it that's somehow translated through. I mean, it's just...
Also interested about St. Michael being celebrated on the 8th of May. I found out recently that he's associated with the constellation of Taurus, which would be in between the 20th of April and the 20th of May. If I'm...
Oh yes, yeah.
Aldebaran is supposed to be St. Michael's star. So there seems to be lots of intertwining threads in there and the stuff I've been doing that I never realised before this year that were even there. But you know, everything you turn over now, you seem to find something that's looped in and tied in. Right, Hellstone and the Devil's Line. If you remember, I mentioned that it was difficult getting the exact line because it was sort of the least errors between the sides. Now, I had to move it very slightly to take in Hellstone. But then when I checked the line, it finished up as possibly more accurate. So it looks as though Hellstone is on that line. Right, so is it possible that we had some sort of impact at Hellstone or near it on the 8th of May? And was that associated with St. Michael and the Devil by legend? Now, we've already seen that the Yorkshire complex has these associations. So we've got St. Michael up there, we've got the Devil's Arrows. And through that complex web of lines, there is a connection between Yorkshire and the Devil's Line down here. So could it be the period that Canterbury Henge is drawing us to, the catastrophic end of the Younger Dryas, is when this happened? So that got me looking at meteor showers in 9600 BC and when they were. Now, if you use stellarium at all, you can turn on meteor showers so you can see where the radiant point of the meteor shower is. The radiant point is where they all appear from. And it will only show you when those meteor shower, when the meteor showers are active. So if I look at May the 8th, I see that I get the Northern Taurids, the Southern Taurids, can't read that one, the Orionoids, the Geminids. So all of these are the meteor showers that we get at the end of October. So
Right.
if you think that this is half away in the year away from where it is now, and that 9600 BC is roughly half the great year away, that would explain why all these are active on that date. So very circumstantial, but could something have happened at that period of history? I don't suppose we'll ever know, but it's interesting.
Yeah.
Right, so just to move on from there, then, the Devil's Line. So you may know Peter Benning.
Sorry, can I interrupt you, Marty?
Yeah.
I've just got to give me 2 minutes.
All right, okay.
Oh, great.
I've just got to boot the dog out. There we go.
Right, so on the Brothers of the Serpent Discord piece, there's a guy called Ben who's Quiet Speculation, who you'll know about.
Oh, right, yeah.
Yeah. He suggested trying to draw a great circle from that line. And I'm never convinced by these great circle things. He's quite keen because he's into NASCArsolution.com and all that sort of thing.
Oh, right, yeah. Interesting.
Yeah. So I don't know whether you've come across that, but I did say I'd drop his name and I'd drop the name of the site. So.
Yeah, no, great. It's a sort of thing I've never really dived into, but the Nazca lines, just in themselves, are absolutely
fascinating
sort of topic, and I think anyone who tried to have a go at any of that is a bit of a hero, really. And
I think you've got to be brave.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you can see it drawn out here, and I did find 2 interesting places it went quite near, but I think it is a lesson in caution. So just because it goes near, you can't necessarily say that they're related. So the anyway, it's down here.
Yeah.
So it goes very close, actually. So it's only 14 miles away, which in a 25,000 mile long circle is absolutely nothing. So do we think that maybe there's a relationship to the devil with this particular monument?
He looks a lot like the Cernauis giant, doesn't he?
It does, doesn't he? Yes.
Yeah.
And then further around the world, there's the giant Buddha at Lishan. That's a bit further away, but it's only 76 miles, so it's percentage-wise, it's not very far off. So we've got two big figures. Now, if there weren't figures, I'd ignore them, but, you know, it's just a little bit suggestive. As I say, a lessening caution. You can believe it if you wish.
Yeah.
Right. So I want to go back to How Hill. So we did talk about it being a survey datum point for the build. And this is a picture drawn by one of the guys on the Discord.
Oh, is that Troy's, is it?
Yeah. So this is.
I love that one. Do you know what? It's so nice to see ancient people, one, not depicted naked and butt flaps.
Yes. Yeah.
And two, with the actual tools of their trade, which they would have needed in order to achieve these things.
Yes.
Yeah.
You know,
I mean, anyone that had not looked at what we've looked at over this would never think that they must have had stuff like this, but they must have done.
They must have done, absolutely.
You can't build stuff like this without knowing what the level is and you know what the height is and what the design is. It's impossible. So on the top of How Hill, we've already mentioned this, there was a chapel dedicated to St. Michael and the Archangel. And the chapel was called St. Michael de Mons. Now, the picture I showed you at the beginning is called Mont St. Michael.
Mont Saint Michel.
Yes, yeah. You live nearer to the French. Your accent is better.
That's how it works, isn't it? Can't wait to hear your Swedish accent.
So that got me interested in St. Michael and the Devil. So there are a number of legends of St. Michael's battle with the devil. So the French legend says that the battle started at a place called Mont Dol, and the devil was killed at Mont St. Michael. So that's Mont St. Michael. This is Mont Dol. It's a very pretty little place. I don't know whether you can see it. It has its own cathedral there. Look.
Oh wow! It's not much of a mountain, is it?
No, not much of a mountain.
I was going to say northern France isn't like massively hilly.
Yeah, I suspect that's the biggest hill for about 100 miles around.
Yeah. And are you about to tell me that obelisk is on it?
Yeah, it's just about where this photograph had been taken from. I think.
Oh, okay, right.
So it's down here somewhere. So that's actually, it's enormous, and it isn't even the biggest one in. Is it Normandy or is it Britain?
It'd be Brittany, wouldn't it?
It'd be Brittany, won't it? There's also a Devil's Seat on this hill.
Oh, right. Okay, interesting.
Yeah. And this is the cathedral. You'll notice that this tower seems a bit odd.
Yeah.
So the legend says that the devil, from sitting on his seat, which we've seen the seat, was watching St. Samson build the cathedral at Dol de Bretagne. Was that a better pronunciation?
Not quite. No, not really.
So he got annoyed and he picked up a rock and he threw it, and it hit the northern tower and destroyed the top of the northern tower, which is why you don't have a complete top on the northern tower.
I was going to say, is that Samson's cathedral? Because
yes,
Samson's fascinating. He's obviously associated with Arthur as well, and loads of the saints and the knights as well.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
Did he go across in the first when they first went across to France to beat the Romans?
No, we would have been a bit late. I mean, it it gets all a bit confusing because each time there's some sort of movement over, it almost gets placed as the first migration.
Right.
So you can take back that movement into Brittany right back to like 383 with Magnus Maximus, but then as there's waves of saints backwards and forwards, people will say, "Oh, this was them bringing Christianity over each time." But you think, well, hold on, it's already been there for 100 years.
Yeah.
You know what's going on, but he is definitely Samson is a really fascinating character in history and mythology, I would say as well.
So anyway, he had this this do with the devil, did Saint Samson. The stone obviously didn't do a tremendous amount of damage and finished up in the field, making that enormous stone that we saw. But it's a pretty familiar story, isn't it? I mean, we've now seen this.
Absolutely.
We've seen it twice in Yorkshire and once here. So there's a very similar site to Mont St Michael in Cornwall, which is St Michael's Mount. St Michael's Mount is at the bottom of the St Michael ley line, interestingly. Now, I've never been to St Michael's Mount. I did not almost get there once. So I was going with Deirdre and we were going across this causeway, and she was pregnant at the time, and she slipped and twisted her ankle. So
oh no.
But I'd have loved to have gone there.
Yeah, no, it's a lovely place.
I've nearly been as well.
Come on then, your story.
I can't remember. I was so young, but I remember going there. I remember the name and everything. So,
all right. So, in the English legend of the devil and St Michael, the devil was killed at Dragon Hill in Uffington. So, this is the Uffington White Horse, which is along here, and this is Dragon Hill here.
Dragon Hill absolutely fascinates me. It's sort of left out a lot. People photograph the horse a lot and photograph the hill fort that's just above it with it, but it's crazy because it's sort of like this outjutting hill opposite, but it looks like it's been leveled.
Yes.
Like someone's just taken the top off it in a flat. It's an incredible piece of engineering.
That's right. You can just about see it on this picture. Can't you?
Yeah, absolutely fascinating. That's the bit I really want to go and look at when I go there.
When I first came across this legend, I thought, well, Dragon Hill, it's obviously just a bit tacked on to the side. But the more you think about it, the more interesting it is.
No, it's fascinating.
Yeah. So this is interesting, though. So if I draw a line from Mont St Michael to the centre of Henge at Thornborough, it's 0.2 degrees off due north, which gives me an error of 2 miles at Thornborough. And it's 385 miles long. Now, How Hill is even nearer to the line than Thornborough Henge. So maybe going from Mont St Michael to St Michael's Chapel on How Hill was what they were aiming to do. Dragon Hill is 1.3 miles from the line.
Okay.
Now, if I draw a line from Mont St Michael to St Michael's Mount, right, I then get a triangle, a right angle triangle. So this is at right angles. That goes to the Devil's Arrows, but maybe it's just not quite accurate enough to be shown at How Hill. So a perfect right angle would be 31.33 degrees, and you can see it's 30.59. So it gives an error of 4.9 miles at the Devil's Arrows. And the line length is 325 miles long, the error is 1.5 miles. Now, I just couldn't understand that when I first found out. And I still can't actually. What does it mean?
Yeah.
If you want to bring in some more myth as well, and the story at St. Michael's Mount is King Arthur killing a giant.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
And it doesn't take much to think that St. Michael killing the devil can turn into King Arthur killing a giant.
Yeah. And in fact, isn't there something about what's his name, the Brutus? Brutus's friend killing a giant.
Yeah, Quirinius fought the giant. And there's much debate about where that happened. But St. Michael's Mount is one of the places where
that's
gets
what I thought. Yeah,
fascinating.
Yeah.
So, as I said a couple of slides before, it's all getting very convoluted and entangled. Anyway, is it possible that these were aimed at How Hill and there's some deep significance in How Hill and St. Michael's Mount and St. Michael's Mountain or whatever that is in French? So, that was the St. Michael bit. We talked about churches and how they seem to be related to St. Michael. Or the ones near the Devil's site seem to be, and a bit more digging on that. And there are 3 names that have churches that keep reappearing. So it's St. Michael, possibly with All Angels and All Saints, All Angels or All Saints, and St. Mary. So some examples of this. This is at the Devil's Arrows, so you can see here there's an All Saints Church there, St. Mary's there, St. Michael and All Angels there. Of the others, the Grace Church is one of these new ones that's popped up. There are a few others, but these are, they're pretty close.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is Thornborough. So St. Mary's, St. Michael, St. Michael, St. Mary, St. Mary. Obviously, the Methodist Church is very new. In comparative terms, very new. So there's only one that's not in that group. And then if we go to Rudstone, the church there is All Saints. And one of the local villages has a St. Michael's Church, the nearest local village, actually.
I've noticed some Michael's churches are dedicated to St. Michael's and All Angels as well.
Yes,
quite obviously.
Well, the legend of the battle, or the story in the in Revelation, is that it's St. Michael and his army,
host,
Yes, his host. So I think that's possibly why. So now we've seen the other sites. These were all the ones on that other slide, but there are more of them. I mean, it's just.
So you're not alone, because Hugh Evans definitely reckons there's Michael and Mary churches are deeply related to his zodiac in North Wales as well. So.
Oh right, okay. Well, you might want to give him this next bit then. So what I wanted to do was a statistical analysis. Try saying that without your teeth in. But I needed a database of churches, and it's amazing how difficult it is to get a decent one, actually. But eventually I emailed the Church of England admin office, and they wrote back and said, well, there's something on the internet. And they gave me a link to it. I'd already found it, actually, and rejected it because I thought it was rubbish. Well, the quality of the data wasn't good.
So it looks like certain counties are very well covered and others aren't.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not just that, but the data within it needs a lot of cleaning up.
Oh, okay, right.
I must have spent a couple of days on it, but I'm retired, so I can afford to do that. So, in England, there are about 45,000 churches, and just a quick look at Welsh churches, and it looks as though the naming patterns are very similar to the English ones. If you look at the Scottish ones, they're a lot different. And that's probably because they had the Kirk in Scotland, didn't they? Rather than the Church of England was a bit Catholic for the Scots, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I would expect something different in Wales as well, but then again, even in the West Country, there was, more of a lean towards Methodism and stuff like that as well.
Yeah.
So,
yes, that's true. Yeah,
but
but
I would also expect to see trends across the entire island that would crop up just because of the.
I mean, anything that's Methodist, I've rejected from the analysis. Anyway,
Yes, yeah.
because
Okay.
it would obviously.
You're looking for ancient sites, yeah.
I'm looking for ancient sites. Yeah. So the database I got is about 12,500 in it. So it's a pretty good representation of the 45,000. But quite a lot of those were merged. As the Church of England has shrunk, they've merged parishes. So it's difficult to make head nor tail from the merged ones. So I ruled those out, and I got left with about 9,000. I then tried to map them, and this is the best I could do. Actually, it came out quite well considering the quality of the data. I then wanted to analyse them, so I had a close look at my Devil's sites, and what I did with the Devil's sites was I ruled out the Scottish ones, because obviously, just looking around them, it's obvious that the naming conventions in Scotland were somewhat different from England. And I also ruled out the very remote sites from the list, the ones right in the middle of the moor. So Bear Down Man, for instance.
Yeah. The closest church is going to be quite far away. Yeah.
Yeah. That left me with 31 sites. So then I wanted to analyse those sites. So I wanted to give them each a score. So I looked at the three nearest churches to each one, and I scored them. So if the nearest, I scored them depending on whether they were a St Michael, a St Mary, or an All Saints. And if it was any one of those three, the nearest church, it got a score of 6. If it was the second nearest, it got a 3, and if it was the furthest, it got a 1. Now, so you could have a maximum score for any site of 10.
Right, okay.
Right. 31 sites gave me a score of 133. So I then used the list of churches I had to do 300 random samples, and it did give a very significant result. So the average score of those 300 samples was 90. So the probability is, so assuming this is a normal distribution, if you know anything about statistics, if you don't, just follow the figures, that the probability of this being exceptional, so the sites aren't chosen, site names aren't chosen at random around Devil's sites, is 99.3%. So to anyone that understands the normal distribution, that's higher than 2 standard deviations. It's nearly 3 standard deviations. So this particular graph shows a profile of all the churches. So the most common ones are obviously in the middle. So you'd have a stack of St Michael's and St Mary's totaling up there. So if you totaled up the number of St Michael's churches, you total somewhere around there. The Devil's sites, my score put it right out here. So the probability is pretty enormous that they are purposely named for this reason, because they're near one of those sites.
Right.
So we can say with a high degree of confidence that some church dedications are preferred near devil's sites, and those that are preferred are St. Michael, St. Mary, All Angels and All Saints. We should remember that there was certainly a thing in the Christian religion throughout Europe, I think, but certainly in England, of early Christians destroying sites that were pre-Christian, or taking over pre-Christian sites and using them for their own purposes. So it may not be that surprising that that result comes out. But I thought it was pretty interesting, nonetheless.
Yeah.
It tells you something about the mindset of those people, and it also tells you, I think, something about the continuity of the names of these sites.
I think continuity is the key word.
Yeah.
Certainly what I'm thinking, that there is definitely a greater continuity and understanding of what the Neolithic people were up to up until much more recent periods of history
Yeah.
than we tend to think.
Yeah. I totally agree with that. I mean, I'm not sure where we lost it, but I suspect, for instance, that the early Britons, and that means probably the Welsh, had a reasonable understanding of it.
Yeah, it certainly seems to be the case from the stories that you can directly link to geographical places and.
And if you think about these church namings, sorry, I flipped over too quickly. If you think about these church namings, you'd think that something was going on, certainly to, I don't know, 1200, 1400 maybe.
The other possibility is that it's secret and that it's not been lost at all, and this is the actions of people who remain in hiding for some reason or another.
Yeah, I wouldn't. I mean, all you have to do is think of the Masons. We know about the Masons. How many
I don't think it's outrageous at all.
How many of them don't we know about?
We don't know a lot, do we?
No.
No.
Right. More on Henges. So, Britain is the land of Henges. So, if you remember, previously we talked about these locations of standing stones throughout Europe. This is the locations of Henges. Why is Britain different from France? I just thought that was interesting.
I think it's really interesting, especially considering what you find in Brittany with, stone rows, circles, big standing stones, the burial chambers. It's all there. Why not the Henges? And even you've got these sites in sort of Germany and Switzerland and stuff. Even there, they have a very different feel to them.
Yes,
there is certainly similarities. Don't get me wrong. But
the design does look different. So you see something from I don't know, northern Germany, and you think, well, it is a henge, but
there's
not as we know it.
No.
So there was. I mean, I don't know whether this was a fashion thing or there was some reason for it or what, but it was different. So Thornbury itself, there's some good news on the Henges, because 20 years ago, even the main ones, the two southern ones, were threatened by gravel extraction. So I can't remember the name of the company now, but they were seeking permission to take gravel out of the Henge site itself.
Brett Aggregate, I think.
Yeah, so it's now protected, and English Heritage, who I wouldn't trust as far as I could throw them, actually, but anyway, purchased the two southern ones a couple of years ago, and there was something in the press over quite a bit, actually, over the last year or so, where they refused to pay the amount for the northern one, but eventually they've got their hands in the pockets and taken it over. So for the first site time in 1500 years, all three are in the same ownership.
Yeah, it's great. It's really exciting, isn't it? I mean, I think it's a really interesting synchronicity that it all came about whilst we were doing this as well.
Yeah,
In the middle of our recording. I don't know how long we'll have to wait until the northern ones open to the public, but it's very exciting. Yeah.
I just hope they don't make it into a theme park. But
no, it needs to be done tastefully. You're absolutely right.
yeah, that's right.
I think by the sounds of it, there's some really good local groups who are intent on not only preserving it, but also preserving it as a accessible place for people to visit. So that's really positive.
So you know Shannon in the disco.
Yeah.
She works for a guy who is one of the few line motor experts in Britain.
Oh, right.
Certainly in England. And he does a lot of work for English Heritage. So we're seeing if we can get in touch with that the lady mentioned in that video. Can't remember her name now, Dr. somebody or other anyway.
Oh, right, okay.
I'll let you know if we do.
All right, good luck, yeah.
Right, so we're talking about henges. So these are the other henges in the north. So the ones we've already talked about are all of these and also are below. But there's some around here. There's a group of 3 there and a few down here. This particular group is quite interesting, actually. So it's King Arthur's Round Table, which I've spelt round wrong, I've just noticed. There's a little round table here.
It's fine. We know what you're talking about.
That's right. And there's Maybury Henge here, which is, you can see it's the biggest of the 3. So, previously we'd seen that this is that line from Arborough which goes all the way up to Orkney, and we'd seen that Castlereagh to the Devil's Arrows, or I prefer it the other way actually, the Devil's Arrows to Castlereagh goes through Castle Dykes. In fact, the error is about less than a mile, and it's a pretty long line, so I think that speaks for itself. So the error is 0.35% of the line length. But if we look at Maybury, we can join Maybury through Castle Dykes to Newton Kyme. Now, Newton Kyme I've never had in any of, I knew it was there, but I could never link it into any design or anything else. So this is the first time I've been able to do that. 78 miles long, and there isn't an error.
No.
Thanks.
It's right through it.
Spot on. However, I can then extend that down to West Ashby, and there's also a henge at West Butterwick there. Now it shifts the angle of the line very slightly doing that. That's 145 miles long. The error at West Butterwick is the biggest error. You can actually see it on this, but even that's only 1.58%. Newton Kyme is 0.5%. Castle Dykes is 0.17%. So I think that is a pretty good line.
If I'd surveyed that line with a butt flap and sandals, I'd be pretty chuffed.
And you had to walk it all as well.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
So this is what we've now got. It's looking interesting, isn't it? And then I can go from Maybury Henge. You remember Yarnborough Henge? Yeah. Down to Cadby Henge, which I was at last week, by the way. And the error at Yarnborough is 0.36 miles. And I don't know whether that's a mistake or right, that 36%. So, have we got a network Britain?
Yeah.
What's going on? Right, I'll leave you to think about that because we're changing the subject. So we're going to have a quick look at astronomical alignments. So what are they? So two or more monuments or geographic features lined up and pointing to a particular astronomical event that is normally time related. In fact, I think all astronomical events are really time related, so it's not very surprising. Most often applies to the rise or the set of a specific object, and there's quite often a marker on the horizon. It can be a natural marker to where the event occurs. Mainly solar or lunar, so we have equinoxes, solstices, and I'd ignored them until recently, but cross-quarter days, which are very close to Celtic festivals. So, presumably the pre-Celtic ones as well.
Again, I think interrelated is the word that comes. It's all, even if it might not immediately on the surface seem related, it eventually comes back round. And me and Adam have certainly been reading something where this is all very much part of it.
Yeah, I mean, it really looks it when you start looking at this sort of thing, because you can see that it just points to these places. As far as the moon goes, it's a major or minor lunar standstill. Obviously, the angles those point to and the solstice angles change depending on the latitude. So you can't just take what you can see out of your window and apply it to Giza, for instance, because it'll change. And specific stars. So unless you have other information, it's almost impossible to find anything about specific stars. But you'll see that towards the end that I'm making some interesting claims on the Pleiades. So why were they built? Most people think it's to measure time, and you can understand that. If you haven't got a clock, how do you measure time? So the sun can give you 8 days in the year. So you've got the 2 equinoxes, 2 solstices, and the halfway points between those. The moon can give you 12 or 13, but they're more difficult to measure. So you've got to be, if you're using the moon, you've got to be able to track time because it changes each year. So, and it's within that 18.6 year cycle that we talked about a couple of now, I think it could also be possible that they used it to measure longer periods of time. So because stars, the rise point of stars move along the horizon from a northern point to a southern point, if you can say a particular event occurred when Sirius, for instance, had its northernmost rise, that would freeze that point in time and you could remember when that thing happened. And so that's similar to me claiming that the sudden rise of Aldebaran in 9600 BC had some significance to them. This would require them, I mean, if you go down this list, the complexity of doing the job gets more difficult at each level. So the sun, you can get the equinox and the solstices relatively easy by watching it for 3 or 4 years. The moon is a lot more difficult. You've got to watch it for at least 18.6 years and then hope that it's not cloudy on the night. And this does require you to know that stars do move along the horizon and reach a furthest point and then come back again. So this requires quite an advanced understanding of astronomy. So how do we find these particular where they would occur on the horizon? So we can use Stellarium, and it has a tool called Archeo lines, which show the main movements. So here you can see that you've got the major lunar standstill, the solstice. This is the minor lunar standstill. God knows what that is. That's the equinox, and so on and so forth. And all of them have got writing on them, so you can see what they are, and you can see where they cross the horizon. So, for instance, we've got here. Right, okay. It's the equinox, so it's 270 and 90. And this is for the devil's arrow, so I can pick up the angle, so I know that on a particular date, if I look in that direction and the sun is either rising or setting, that is the time in the great year. Sorry, not in the great year, in the year when where I am. If the sun isn't setting or the moon isn't rising along that line, I'm not at that time of the year.
Mm-hmm.
So getting that angle though isn't the final say in all of this, because the ancients, we assume an object has risen when it just crosses the horizon. The ancients considered that it was you had to be able to see it, basically.
Yeah.
So it's a degree or maybe more above the horizon. So you can imagine looking at the sun on the solstice at the rise of the sun. It's going to be reasonably high before you can even be sure it's above the horizon. So
yeah.
So
especially if you're using is this what about what you're going to say? Yeah, using a notch in the using a notch in the landscape, or a
right,
for something to rise or set against, or yeah.
So you also have to allow for local geography. So if there are hills, you've got to allow for the altitude of the hill. So you need to measure the height of the hill and the distance from it and calculate the angle. And that will give you an adjustment to the height.
Okay.
So I've got some examples of this. So what you can say is that the angle any monument's alignment points to along the horizon will always be a degree or two to the south of what is shown in Stellarium, basically, because it's risen a bit from where we think it is, and you've got to allow for the hills.
This just reminds me of just the sort of pragmatic factor in how the ancients did things anyway, in as much as they had the ability to do some remarkable precision, but sometimes that when you actually get down to the bare bones, that precise point isn't the best way to do things.
Yes, that's
you've
right.
got to allow for the practicalities, which they did very well. And I think that's just another example of that.
Great point.
If you're using the local markers to tell you the time, you want the marker to be where the sun is on that day. You don't want it to be at the actual where it would have crossed the theoretical horizon. If the horizon
absolutely.
But they did know where that theoretical horizon was, because we've seen that on a couple of occasions. So that line from the Devil's Arrows down to South Wales, that is the theoretical line of where the sun crosses the horizon. It's not allowing for the local hills around the Devil's Arrows. So they didn't know they didn't know what they were doing. So let's go back to Yorkshire. This, by the way, is the sign outside the Rudstone Church.
It's quite descriptive, isn't it? You know what you're getting.
Yeah.
That's right. So, as far as I can see, the Devil's Arrows and Rudstone Monolith don't have any local astronomical alignment markers, which I was quite surprised at when I found it, actually. Certainly, the Devil's Arrows have long distance ones, typically that one down to South Wales, but nothing else.
Are we getting to the date for Thornborough soon? Are we, Marty?
That's right at the end, but
all right at the end. All right, okay. I'm getting ahead of myself.
Not that far away. Right, so this is Thornborough, obviously.
Yeah.
And I've put on the map the LiDAR of it as well, so you can see where the entrances to the Henges are. So you can see that there's an entrance there.
Oh yeah, yeah. Oh, that's a nice little overlay, actually. That's nice.
Yeah, I could send you those if you wanted.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah. So these are the lines that join them, and the azimuth angles for these. This one is 147.5 degrees, and the land is dropping off here. So you could actually pick up the exact point of the rise of the sun or the moon.
Oh, right. Nice.
But there's no southern entrance as far as I can see. If you look at the LiDAR on this, I just can't see a southern entrance.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
It does look as though there is an east and a western one, as well as a northern one. So the moon rises at 150 degrees. So I'm pretty certain that there isn't a southern there isn't a southern alignment to the moon coming out of Thornborough. But looking north, so from here I can look north and look directly through the northern Henge. I can't do now because there's trees in the way, but I can do it. And that line is 321.8 degrees. The land rises slightly, and if you go through all that calculation, you find out that the major lunar standstill northern set is at 321.8 degrees. Now, just before we go on and look at that, what that means, I've also drawn these lines through the other entrances. And it's difficult to tell because of all the erosion on the Henges. But it looks as though this might be the alignment of the major northern moonrise, and this might be the summer solstice. It's difficult to tell, so I wouldn't like to nail too much on that. So I'm in the central Henge, and it's that one day in the 18-point-year cycle that is the northern moon set, and I'm looking directly through the the northern Henge. So these are the walls of the central Henge.
Yep.
This is the southern wall of the northern Henge, and this is the northern wall. So I'm looking directly through it, and the moon comes down this line, and just before it sets, it appears like that.
Magic.
Clever, then.
Yeah.
And it took me, I don't know, 2 or 3 hours to do that, so God knows how they did it in practice.
Yeah, God.
Yeah.
Right, round here, these are the stellarium angles for all of these events. So major lunar north rise, all the way around. The blue ones are the ones that I found markers for, and the red ones I haven't. Now you've got to remember that these sites were built 5,000 years ago, give or take a few years, and there's been a lot of changes to the land in that time. So who knows what's happened. I want to take you through a few of them, particularly the ones on this side. The ones on this side, if you're interested, we'll go through them. If you're not, that's fine. First thing to say is there doesn't seem to be an equinox marker, which is relatively interesting. If you remember, at the Devil's Arrows, their Rudstone would be a remote equinox marker. You won't be able to see it, but it's there. And so would Yarnborough Henge. So maybe I thought for a while that maybe Thornborough was a lunar temple, and the Devil's Arrows was a solar temple. But you know, it's pure speculation. So let's have a look at a few of these, because it's the first one in particular shows you the methodology of working it out, and is relatively interesting anyway. So stellarium gives a rise azimuth angle of 36.73 for the lunar standstill, and that is the line.
Okay.
Now, going out over there's a line of hills coming down here that drops down to normal farmland there, but you can see the line of hills comes out here, around here, and this is the high point, so the high point line. So this would be the line that the moon moves in, and you can see at one point it goes behind this hill.
Yeah.
So we're now looking at the moon is risen. It's just above the horizon at point B. So it's got an altitude of about 1 degree. So they'll be able to see it along that line. They wouldn't see it there, obviously, because it's just cutting the horizon. So it would have run along the horizon here, and at that point it would be just above the line. You notice that there's an All Saints church there. That's the All Saints church at Ingleby Ironcliff, point B there. Now, the church itself was built in 1821, but on the site of a previous older church, and probably older churches than that. And there are very old stones in there that have been maintained within the church. So at point B then, just after point B, the moon then passes behind this hill. The vertical altitude is exaggerated, but it suffices. Gets to point C and it pops up again. Boom, I'm here. So it becomes visible, and that's at the ancient settlement of Scarthwood Moor.
Interesting.
Yeah. So megalithic.co.uk says it's a large settlement, potentially in continuous use from the Neolithic period to the Iron Age.
One of those.
Right, nearby there are a group of standing stones, 7 stones called the Seven Sisters. Now, remember the Devil's Arrows are Pleiades, and they're the Seven Sisters?
Yeah.
So the tallest of the stones is 5 foot high, and it's got some deep weather grooves in it. You can't really see them on there, but the others are about 3 foot high. Right.
The deep weather grooves keep on reappearing in the stones in the area, don't they?
Yeah, they do. It's interesting, isn't it? Are the grooves deliberate or not? I don't know.
Or even if they're just selected for the grooves, it's interesting.
So the moon continues moving, and point D is actually probably the real standstill marker. So this is what it would look like. Once again, the vertical height of the hill is exaggerated, but the moon is now within that little trough there. So you were talking about a trough before, Peter.
Yeah.
There's a typical one.
Yeah, no,
now,
absolutely.
Interestingly, this whole area is covered by these cup-marked stones.
Yeah.
And remember, I was speculating in the last episode of the episode before about these might be some form of writing or recording.
Yeah.
And it would seem really appropriate that I've mentioned on the last slide that because the moon, because throughout the year, the farthest movement of the moon moves further along each month. You've got to record where it was last time if you want to use it as a calendar. So they have to have some way of recording, and I suspect that this is, you put a stone in each one of these when that particular event has occurred, and you've got a way of recording it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's the simplest way I can think of using it. It could be more complicated than that.
I mean, even if a mark was made each time, I mean, if a book can be destroyed if you've marked something in it. Astronomical stuff requires recording over long periods of time as well.
Yeah.
So stone as much, especially one that's bloody set into the ground as well.
Yeah. So you can see how many of these things there are here.
Oh yeah, quite a concentration, isn't it?
Yeah. So, and I'm sure there's some that we haven't found, and some that have been taken away and used in walls.
Yeah, damaged. Yeah.
So that was the major lunar north rise, and I showed that because it shows how you work it out, and it also shows some interesting features that point to the significance, or that though that particular location was related to the Devil's Arrows and Thornborough. So the summer solstice sunrise is at 46 degrees, and here you can just see it. So by the time it's got to 40 or 50 degrees, just short of 49.9, it's at 2.11 degrees. So the hill line from Thornborough is 0.6 degrees. Diameter of the sun is 0.5. So we're looking for an altitude of the sun of about 2 degrees, so that it's pretty obvious.
Yeah, So it can be fully counted to say has risen. Yeah.
Has risen, yeah. So 2.11 is pretty good, I think. And I've said there we get it at 49.9 degrees. So here we've got it. So looking from Thornborough, that's the stellarium figure. This is 50 degrees up to something called Thimbley 9 stones. And this is, if I draw a line across there, this is the profile that I'm getting. So this is the stellarium first rise. So the sun would rise up that slope effectively. And Thimbley 9 stones marks the point where it would appear above the horizon. So this is Thimbley 9 stones, and it looks as though there's 12 of them to me.
Brilliant.
Most of these sites have less than claimed in the name. So I think that's quite good.
Both interesting numbers as well, with relationships to each other as well.
Yeah. So that was the summer solstice. this was the one that we talked about some time ago, actually, Peter.
Oh, yeah.
So this is the says it's the maximum. Minor lunar maximum. Yeah. So this is the line from Stellarium, and once again we get a profile here. Goes like that, and by the time I get to the point where I can see it's above the hill, I'm on this line here, and you'll see that there are a few markers along this line.
Yeah.
So Friars Cross, Gallow Hill Tumuli, at the top there's Kepwick, Long Barrow, and not far from there the Steeple Cross. So this is what it would look like. So once again, it's climbing that hill, and this is what it would look like when it's just above there. So you can see that it's just above. It's about 2 diameters there. So
and Kepwick Long Barrow would be right under that.
Yep, it would. And then these are the sites. So this is Gallows Hill Tumulus. I mean, Steeple Cross, Friars Cross, which is Kepwick, and Kepwick Long Barrow. So, I mean, you can hardly make it out here, which is someone's drawn around the picture, so you can.
Yeah. They're very ancient things, long barrows, aren't they? So
yeah, so the area is very ancient. So this is a quote from megalithic.co.uk. Along the ridge top is one of the oldest roads in England, with numerous barrows, cairns, etc. It is known as Hambleton Street, or more commonly the Hambleton Drove Road. So I suspect it became a drove road, in the a lot more recently than it was a proper road. I've walked this along this ridge. It's on the can't remember the name of the walk, but it's one of the long distance footpaths along the North York moors. And I've walked.
Is it like the Ridgeway in as much as it's an elevated?
Yes,
it goes quite a long way. So even if there isn't necessarily a set path on it, people have probably been using it for a long time to get backwards and forwards.
Yeah. It drops off to the west, and very gradually it drops off to the east as well. So it's right along the ridge. And if you look here, there's a reeve system as well.
Oh, right. Awesome.
So could be mining. I mean, this area, the North York moors, were very used for mining. So there's iron mining, coal mining, I think. Do you know Whitby Jet? It's a black soft stone that is related to coal that was used in the 19th century to make a lot of jewellery. So it's a shiny black stone. So I think that is interesting.
There's a lot going there. So very ancient then, very ancient.
Yeah. So I want to include these two in the conversation because these actually relate back to other henges.
Okay, cool. Could I just have a quick break? Give me 2 seconds.
Can.
Thank you.
I might be out of sync here in a minute. So...
I've thrown the whole thing off course.
Yes, I've managed to break it somehow. Still, we can recover. We have the technology.
Oh, yes.
So... Still on the wrong place.
So I've seen a few of those images that Troy did for your Brothers of the Serpent episode.
Yeah, they're pretty good, aren't they? Yeah.
Did he talk to you about them beforehand, or did he just?
We had a discussion about the type of things. Why did it go there?
But yeah, some lovely images.
Let me just get this in.
Yeah, sure. But yeah, I'm just saying that
Yeah.
he got some fantastic images that really, really captured the.
Yes, we had a couple of discussions about what were going to be in the episodes. I don't think Adam's seen them all, has he? But he'll have seen a couple of them. But that one from the top of there's this one on my desktop.
Yeah.
Can you see the desktop one, Adam?
Yeah, that's lovely.
These dancing ladies around.
Oh, great! Yeah. Oh, they were made for you, were they? For your videos?
Yes.
Stories of the Serpent.
Yeah.
Oh, great.
So yeah, and there was that one that I showed about the 3 people surveying on top
Surveying,
of,
yeah, and I saw that.
Oh, is it another one like that? Yeah.
Yeah,
oh, fantastic.
Yeah, I like that scrying dish one as well.
Yeah,
That's
and the
really
scrying bit as well. Yeah. So
very cool.
I can't remember who mentioned it, but we were talking about how you do the astronomy in those days, and someone, I don't know whether it was on here or on the Brothers podcast, but they were saying you fill a bowl with water and just stare into it, and you get the reflection of the stars, and that enables you to measure the distance between them if you think about it.
Because you have it on a smaller scale.
How do you do it? How do you do it in the sky?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I thought that was a great idea.
It's not that big.
Oh, yeah, brilliant.
Yeah. So, and there is a picture of that, which have you got copies of them, Pete?
No, I don't think I do.
I'll post them. I'll DM you them later on, and then you could put them in the text or something like that. I think that they're amazing pictures. I think.
Oh yeah, fantastic.
Yeah. Now these next 2 surprised me because remember we're talking about alignments to stellar events from Thornborough. So Hutton Moor Henge is north of Cannabarn Henge. So I should have done a big about, but I haven't. But this is Nunwick Henge, and this is the main line down to the Devil's Arrows. And if you remember, there's another line that comes up here where you've got Hutton Moor, Cannabarn, and then the Devil's Arrows. Hutton Moor, I've never found anything that it could be included in, apart from a couple of long lines up to Catterick Henge and other places. But the angle from Thornborough, and this is how I found it rather than doing it the other way, is 131.8. The high point is 0.2 degrees, so you can see there the line. You wouldn't be able to see the henge from here, but if you put a big fire on, so it's on the top of this hill, if you put a big fire on there, you'd be able to see the fire, because it's not that far. So the moon would have to be at 2.88 degrees. So if you look at this, the angle is 131.8, and the moon is at 2.88 degrees. So that does look as though it has some significance. And we'll see later on that it might be included, there's something else that gives it significance, and significance to the moon as well. But I don't want to get to that yet. But just remember that it's a minor lunar standstill rise from Thornborough. And the last one I specifically wanted to talk about was this one, because this is Aldebaran and Cannabarn.
Yeah, Aldebaran's a big one, isn't it?
That's right. But the sunrise is at 134 degrees. The angle to the henge is 135 8.7, and the angle, so it's almost level and you're not going to be able to see it, but once again, you like a fire here, you'd be able to see the fire. So when it's 1 degree above the horizon, that's 1.5 degrees actually, it's at 135.77. So that once again looks as though that line has some significance. Not only that, but the line runs to Canabarn Henge and then on to All Saints Church at Kirby Hill, once again, a significant church name. Yeah. So as I've said before, the Henge is featured for several things now. So it's in the sky map as Aldebaran. The angle to the Devil's Arrows is the southernmost rise of Aldebaran. I've not covered this yet, but it has some significance to a number encoded in it. And here it's a winter solstice marker. This is the church itself. There's been a settlement in Kirby Hill for over 1,000 years. Church possesses, according to this, many historical features, including 4 fragments from the 10th and 11th century of grave markers and one incomplete. So there they are. You can see some beautiful carving on this. Now, this one that I find interesting, because doesn't that look like those cup and ring stones?
Yes. I definitely see this.
So I think next time I'm up there, I'm going to try and visit this church and have a closer look at that one.
Oh, they're stunning.
Yeah. Now, if you think about it, for Canabarn to be aligned to the sunrise from Thornborough, you'd have to have a line in the sky for this to happen from the central, sorry, I'm losing the track here, from the central star of Orion's belt through Aldebaran to the sun. Now, is there a time when that actually happens? Well, there was, and that was in 9100 BC. Now, the thing about that, though, is Anilam, which is the central star of Orion's belt, never rises at that time. So if you knew that, you'd have to be a very good astronomer. I'm not saying they did know that, but I just find that an interesting fact. So there are some others that I've found, but by now we must be getting fairly bored of these. So unless you really want to look at them, we can move on. What do you want to do?
Go on, move on, and we'll we can do them another day or...
Right. I want to talk about numbers that might be encoded into the design. So I guess you know what. Do you know what 1.618 is? It's the golden ratio. And these are all pictures of things that might be related to the golden ratio. So who discovered the golden ratio? In theory, the standard model says that the Greeks discovered it. And what is it? Well, the easiest way of describing it is to think of a line which is C long, and I can divide that line into 2 sections at any point along the line where I have a long length and a short length MB. Right. But there is one point on the line where the ratio of B to A is the same as the ratio of A to C. Now that sounds as though it should be 2/3 of the way along, but it's not. Now, just in passing, it's supposed to be that when that ratio occurs, it's supposed to be the most pleasing way to split the line. and in figures. So A divided by B is the same as C divided by A, and the number that gives you is 1.618 blah 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 blah, and it goes on forever. Or in shorthand, 1.618. Now that doesn't help you divide the line, so if we do it the other way up, so B divided by A is the same as C divided by, A divided by C. That gives you a figure of 0.61803. Notice the figures after the decimal point?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Magic, isn't it?
it is.
That's 0.618 of the way along. So if it was 2/3 of the way along, it would be 0.6666667. So it's not 2/3. Now this thing appears in lots of places in nature. So in the perfect body, it would appear like this, and like this, and like this, and this, and this. This old-fashioned guy seemed to know about it.
What's the word? Is it complex symmetry? Is that the term of it, or something like that? So rather than being like a standard symmetry of something is equal to each other, there's this is it dynamic symmetry? I think that's the word.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Dynamic symmetry is where there's that internal relationship.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. So it appears in the face as well. These are all imperfect people, by the way. Mathematically, by the way, it's this. Let me just tell you some more interesting things about it. So I can make a series of numbers where I take a 0 and I add a 1 to it, I get 1. I can then take that figure there, put it on this line, and take that figure there and put it on this line. It gives me 2. Take that there, move it down to there, and that there, move it down to there. It gives me 3. Once again, there, 5, and I can repeat that. I get this string of numbers. Now, I can hear you all screaming, "Oh, I'm bored with this. What's that got to do with the golden ratio?" Well, if I divide this number here into this, I get this. See where that's going?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
This is
Right.
the Fibonacci sequence, or the Fibonacci series, by the way. And you'll see its relevance in a moment. But there is some fun numerology first. So if I divide 1 by 1.618, I get 0.618. If I square 1.618, I get 2.618. How does that happen?
Yeah.
Right, the most perfect. So if you got a load of people in a room and showed them pictures of rectangles, you would find that they eventually would work out that they'd prefer one that's 1.618 long by 1, whatever the sizes happen to be. Now, what I can do, though, is I can split the long length and draw a vertical line on it like this. Split that long length and draw a horizontal line. Split this long length, draw that,
Yeah.
draw that, draw that. So I'm getting increasingly small squares. Now, interestingly, these are related together by the area that's within them.
Yeah.
So 2, 3, 5, 8, 13, 21, 34 come from this. I can then draw a curve in here touching each of these long lengths like that, all like that. Now, is that curve familiar to you?
Absolutely.
Oh yes.
Yeah.
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 Of course, some people extend it, I think, beyond what it should be, like they do any good idea, and I'm not sure that's right at all. In fact, I think that's bollocks, but these look fairly convincing to me. Right.
I think there's definitely use of the golden ratio in Da Vinci, but I think maybe
Yes,
the spiral in that sense is possibly a step too far. But
that's right.
Yeah.
Now, there'll be people that watch this eventually that'll be screaming, what's this got to do with megaliths? Well, look at this line here. Why is Nunwick Henge there? It's not at the centre.
it's not, is it, Marty?
No. So, I've known for more or less when I started looking at this that Nunwick Henge isn't far from the golden ratio point of that line. So if I measure from the central Devil's Arrow to the central Henge, it's 54,816 feet. And to Nunwick, it's 35,218. So I divide one by the other, I get 1.556. So remember, I'm looking for 1.618.
618, yeah.
Now, if that had worked out to something like 1.595 or something, I'd have said, well, point proved. Must be right. But I considered that it wasn't right, so well tried but wrong, I thought.
It's not far off, but it's not as good as some of your other
Yeah.
tolerances, is it?
So I've filed it away as an interesting little feature. But then I remembered that each of the Devil's Arrows is an individual star, and each of Thornborough Henges is an individual star. Now, why would you measure from the middle ones if that was the case? Wouldn't you be more inclined to measure from the extreme ones? So the southern stone of the Devil's Arrows to the northern Henge. Now, if I do that, the distance from the southern arrow to Nunwick Henge is 35,634 feet. The distance from the southern arrow to the northern Henge is 57,000 and a bit. And that gives me 1.61805.
Damn.
So the error is 15
Nice.
feet, and the error is probably in Google rather than on the ground.
Yeah.
Now that works in any unit, by the way. So I could do
Mhm.
that in meters. I could do it in whatever I wanted. So we can be sure the Greeks were not the first to discover the golden ratio. Now I was amazed when I worked that out.
Yeah, that is
Yeah, that's
fantastic.
great.
Now it might also be in the Henges. These are actually quite too eroded, really, to say that this is right or wrong. But on here, you can see that the surveyed distance of the diameter of the outer Henge bit is 860 feet, and I measured the inner one to 532, which gives me 1.618. And I must admit, I did fiddle about with this a bit, so, so it could be right, could be wrong. Right. You know what Eulier's number is?
No, that's not one I've come across before.
2.718. So many things decay or increase over time depending on the amount of the thing that there is at that time. So a good example is water running out from a hole in the bottom of a vase. So when the vase is full, there's a lot of pressure, it gushes out. As it empties, the pressures fall and the rate slows, and it goes like this. So you get a curve. Right, so the general form of that is x equals e to t, where t is time and x is the flow rate, and e is a constant, and the constant is 2.718.
Oh, weird. Okay.
So this applies to lots of things in real life: radioactive decay, growth of plants, compound interest, the way that the shuttle heat shield wears away, loads of things.
Wow. Assume it's an average though. How's that? I mean,
How
So,
do
for
you
instance,
mean?
like the decay, I mean, would you wouldn't expect over a certain amount of time to say for one molecule to drop off or whatever on a
No,
moment
no, it's the average over a large
over a
number.
period of time.
Yeah,
Yeah. Okay. So
yeah,
I'm just trying to get it straight in my head. That's all.
yeah, yeah.
That's cool.
But
But
if
you
you're
get this
interested,
constant number.
that's
As,
right. If you're
yeah.
interested, read up about it because this isn't a maths
No,
presentation.
absolutely, I will. Sorry, yeah, absolutely.
Oh, we can discuss it on the Discord. If you
Yeah,
like.
yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah. Yeah, remember Claro Hill? It's a
Yes,
hill
I do.
south of the Devil's Arrows that could have been bigger than Silbury Hill. This is the best picture we have of it. If you remember, someone saw it in some date or other and said it was 200 foot high.
Oh, yeah.
This is the best map I've got of where it is, so this is the best location I have for it. So on that location, it's 21,293 feet from the Devil's Arrows, and if I use the same baseline, which is from the southern Devil's Arrows to the northern Henge at Thornborough, I get a figure of 2.708, where the actual number is 2.718, so that's an error of 75 feet. And remember, I've approximated where this is, so it could be more accurate than that. It could be a load of baloney, but it's pretty near.
That's pretty awesome.
Yeah. Well, this is something you wouldn't expect them to know.
No.
I mean, the golden ratio, you can make up a reason why they know it, but this is genuine maths. Works in any unit of measure, by the way. So this next one's an oddity. It's also only his number, and this is really odd. So this is it's not doing it in the same way, so we're not using the same baseline. So I'm using from the centre arrow to Canabarn Henge. It's 20,136 feet. You'll see why I'm doing it from the central arrow in a minute. The distance from the central arrow to the central Henge is 54,816 feet. Remember, each of these are stars, so the central arrow is a star. I can't remember its name now. In the Seven Sisters, the Pleiades, and the central Henge is a star. So I divide them together and I get 2.722. So it's even nearer than the other one was. Now, the error is 31 feet. Now, but this line, this measurement is actually in the stars. You can go to Stellarium and measure the angle between the central Pleiades star and Aldebaran, and the central Pleiades star and the central
Henge.
Yes. And that is the figure that pops out.
Wow.
How does that happen? It's like the moon being the same diameter as the same apparent diameter as the sun. Right, so we're back to the normal way of calculating now. So this is pi. So there's a henge called Tenland's Henge up here, which is actually on an alignment that runs out to a couple of henges just north of Rudstone. Now, Tenland's Henge is 18,474 feet. Our baseline is that. That gives me a figure of 3.122. that's pi.
Yeah.
So it's a bit of a bigger error, but it's not bad.
No.
Right. Now this is odd. So I finish up with a figure of 2,160 or 2,159. So it could be the years in an age of the Great Year, or it could be the lunar diameter in miles. Now you've got to assume they knew what a mile is, as we consider a mile, if that's right. But there might be a reason to think that that is right. So the distance from the Southern Arrow to Hutton Moor Henge is 26,618. Our baseline is that. That gives me a figure when I divide it together of 21,666. So, but remember, it might sound odd that when doing it by the moon, but Hutton Moor Henge is a marker for the minor lunar still here. Not only that, but if you remember, I draw a line up to Cannabarn Henge, and if I extend it so it goes past Hutton Moor, this isn't what you would consider to be an alignment. Both the Tenlands Henge and Hutton Moor are off the line. And why would that be? It's odd, because they don't make mistakes like that. However, if I draw my green line here, so that's the minor lunar standstill. This yellow circle is the figure I would need to give me that 21,060 figure. So anywhere along that circle would be okay to give me that answer. The only place it matches is where Hutton Moor Henge is.
Right.
Now, if that don't blow your mind, I don't know what will.
Amazing.
So that just confirms what I've just told
you.
Right, let's just talk about Aldebaran and Cannabarn again before we go on to the age of the sites. So Cannabarn is Aldebaran in the star map. It also, if you take the line down to the Devil's Arrows, points to the southernmost rise of Aldebaran in 9600 BC. If you position the whole thing correctly, you get this solstice summarise from Ripon Cathedral, and that would only occur if if Cannabarn is in the right place. So it's a bit of a complex thing. So Cannabarn is the winter solstice marker from Thornborough Central Henge. It has Oili's number encoded. So 2, 3 and 4 depend on the latitude you're at. So have they selected the latitude for Thornborough and the Devil's Arrows and Cannabarn to reflect these things? I mean, I don't know, but all of those are true assessments of the position of Cannabarn and Aldebaran and Ripon Cathedral. It could all be a big coincidence, but who knows? Maybe not. Right. The final bit is the date. So the standard model date range is from 3,500 to about 1,800. 1,800 is obviously somebody who knows nothing about British history, because these are the Beaker people and it wasn't built by the Beaker people.
I was going to say that crosses those dates across the entire Neolithic and the Copper Age and go into the Bronze Age.
Exactly. But the preferred standard model date is 2,800.
It's a general Henge date, isn't it?
Yeah. So let's just use that as a way of homing in. I'll start with a woo-woo alternative to begin with.
Right.
I don't think this is right, but there is some evidence, and it does make a neater solution. So if you remember, the date of 9100 was encoded by that winter solstice sunrise from Thornborough to Canterbury and Aldeburgh. You probably don't remember, but it was.
No, I do. I remember that.
Yeah. 9600 BC is the date of the furthest rise of Aldeburgh, which we've talked about 2 or 3 times today. And isn't that far before 9100? I suspect catastrophic events at that time would be remembered at that time. So the simplest way then to lay this out is to lay out Aldeburgh and then throw the line up to Thornborough as the way that it would fall. So you take Aldeburgh and the Devil's Arrows as being, Canterbury and the Devil's Arrows as being Aldeburgh, and the Pleiades, and then Thornborough has to fall where it is. So that would be the most simplest solution to it, and that would be the date of 9100 BC. But there is absolutely no evidence that these sites could be that old. But I will point out that the Yorkshire sites are very scanty indeed.
Yeah. That's a lot. Same for a lot of Neolithic sites as well, and proposed Neolithic sites. Yeah.
I don't think anyone's interested in them is the problem. So what I think is the real build date then. So we start off by saying the Devil's Arrows represent the Pleiades, and I think that is indisputable. So the rising point of all stars tracks along the horizon, and the Pleiades goes from 29 degrees to 129 degrees over half a great year, and it does this. So this goes back to 50,000 BC, and you can see that it's going north and reaches its northernmost point at about 47,000, then begins moving south, reaching its southernmost point at about 34,000, goes north again, reaching its northernmost point at about 23,000. 23,000 is the absolute depth of the Ice Age. Moving further south again, reaching that point at roughly 9,000. Coming back down. See that the points of these vary, and that's because of we're looking at long enough time periods to see the effects of the tilt of the Earth.
Ah, right, okay.
Now, our standard build date is here, and that gives a line across there to roughly 90 degrees. So Pleiades at this point is rising more or less at 90 degrees. So around 2870, Pleiades has its helical rising, and that is due east on the vernal equinox. Helical rising, by the way, is rising just before the sun. It doesn't have to rise in the same line as the sun. It can be anywhere along the horizon. But in this case, it is in the same line as the sun. So the helical rising of the Pleiades is here. So you can see that here we're talking about Pleiades. It's 90 degrees. It's just above the horizon. And we're talking about, I fiddled here because I knew the date I was looking for by the time I did this picture. So this is the 21st of March,
Mm-hmm.
2873, and you'll see in a moment why it's 2873. This is the horizon down here.
So that's pretty important events then,
I think
coming at the
that
same time.
well, helical rising, I mean, if you read anything about Egypt, you will know about the helical rising. Sirius.
Serious, yeah.
Yeah. So it took me ages to find out what the helical rising is. There is also an opposite to the helical rising, by the way, which is the acronical rising. And in the same year, I mean, this is just basic astronomy, but in the same year, at the autumn equinox, the Pleiades have their the opposite, which is the rising of the planet above the eastern horizon at sunset. So it's the opposite end of the year.
The opposite end. So okay, yeah, I see.
Yeah. So if I then had a look around about this year, once again, this year, by the way, I was thinking 2,800 was probably right. And then my 3 o'clock voices kept nagging me again, saying, it's not right, it's 2,870. So the only time they've ever given me a proper answer. they normally say, look at this.
Yeah.
So I had a look around about 2,800, and this occurs on the summer solstice. This conjunction occurs on the summer solstice in 2873. And if you're watching the horizon, you would see Castor rise, then Pollux, and they'd be a bit further out from where the sun is, so they're rising there, but they would rise. Then Jupiter would rise exactly on the ecliptic, followed by Mercury, Venus, Regulus. The moon would be almost invisible because it's a very new moon. And then I suspect you wouldn't see Mars because it'd be lost in the sun.
In the sun, yeah.
Yeah, but if you were a good astronomer, you'd probably know that Mars.
You know it was there, yeah.
Yeah. So this conjunction actually isn't that rare, and it's really controlled by Jupiter.
Okay.
So Jupiter has is it an 11-year cycle or something like an 11-year cycle. But it is rare if you associate it with the summer solstice.
Yeah.
So this
and
is
you throw in the Pleiades as well.
Yeah, that's right. Same year, the Pleiades. So I believe that the complex was designed before it was built. It had to be designed before it was built, and the design date is 2,873 BC.
Brilliant.
Convinced?
Yeah. Do you know what? I think this conjunction, as you say, just with that equinoctial conjunction with the Pleiades as well, and how much the Pleiades is obviously important in this complex.
Yeah.
I think that's
Well, I was pretty certain it was to do with that helical rising of the Pleiades, but when I found this, I just well, that's it. That's got to be right.
Yeah, I like that. I do like that.
Okay, let's have a quick summary then. So I think we've proved beyond any reasonable doubt that there is a sky map in Yorkshire.
Yeah.
Coming from those numbers, even if pi and Euler's number and so on is wrong, they knew the golden ratio. They had a knowledge of maths that we've never ever suspected. No one has suspected. The Ripon Cathedral site could be one of the oldest in England. So probably goes back to 2,870 BC at least. The location of the Yorkshire complex is special because it's his distance from the pole, and the fact that these alignments only work at 54 degrees north. The monuments were part of a much wider design by the looks of it, and as you were saying earlier, Peter, it looks as though the whole country was mapped and probably networked. The Devil's links seem to have something in common, so quite what that is, whether it is what we think of as the devil and whether they were devil worshippers or whether something else, maybe the devil was just another god, who knows?
Or a comet, or
a comet, or anything like that. The design date of the complex was 2873 BC, and these people were bloody clever.
Yes,
absolutely.
Yeah,
and that's it.
It's fantastic.
Thank you, Martin. Yeah,
it's been a real pleasure having you do that with us.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I think the thing to take away, as you say, is that these people are a lot smarter than we generally give them credit for.
Yeah.
And that there's links all over the island, if not further over the world.
Yeah.
And also that this knowledge seems to be a continuity into recorded history as well. This isn't just an inaccessible prehistoric time that we can't get to grips with. There is actually physical evidence we can look at.
Yes.
You actually feel, or I actually feel now, that people have been deliberately avoiding this, partly because they didn't know, and partly because no one knows what we've been through in this, apart from people who watch this. And there'll be plenty of people lining up to say it's absolute bollocks. But some of those things you can't argue with. You can't argue with the golden ratio. You can't argue with the star map.
No.
And also, I think it's important, Mark. You've provided something which other people can build on.
Yes.
And and they can't just say, "Oh, well, I think he got this bit completely wrong," and he fudged that. But at least if they've got something else to work from, provided.
If this series of podcasts gets someone excited enough to take this forward, I'd be really pleased. I mean, I'm 75 this year, so I'm going to drop off this mortal coin before long. So, I need someone to carry the torch.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Well, good. I think you brought this sort of not so well known site to the forefront a bit, and as I say, absolutely privileged to have you on here to do it. So thank you so much for that.
Well, I'd like to thank you both for giving me the opportunity, because certainly if Peter hadn't mentioned it to me, was it September or August or whenever it was he first said, and I thought, well, if that's the case, I better get my thoughts in order then.
Get your act together.
It took ages, but it was worth doing, because every time you went back to it, you found something new.
Yeah.
And I mean, all that stuff about St. Michael's Mount, for instance, all that's new.
Yeah, no, fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, the church stuff, I suspect lots of people realise that, but I'm not sure everyone has done a normal distribution statistical analysis on it. Because,
and it's definitely time that we started applying those sorts of techniques to those things. Right. So, it's no longer just the realm of speculators to point this out. We need to follow it up with science, and science needs to be open to doing that as well.
Yeah.
Yes, precisely. Yeah, the drama of St. Michael and the Devil in the churches and in the landscape is very, very exciting for me. And as well as the golden ratio, I think, what you've done is made it really, allowing us to get a grasp on some really interesting elements of history which aren't known about. I think we're on the brink of a bit of a cultural renaissance, or hoping for one at least. And I think it's
I hope so, but
I I think well, I hope one is coming, and I think your work and people like you who are doing work like this, bringing together all these pieces, is absolutely inspiring. So thanks, Martin.
Right, thanks for having me, guys. And it's,
Yeah,
I've
absolutely.
enjoyed it. I've got to say that I do find these really tiring. So you might notice towards the end I was beginning to lose the track.
No,
of
me and Adam find the same thing. We it is quite uses a lot of energy doing the recording, but
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
as we say, hopefully it will have some use for the future for someone
Yeah.
else.
Yeah.
And we can just stop talking about Neolithic people in this country as just farmers and nothing
Yeah.
else. So
Right.
yeah, great, fantastic.